The sound that pulls you from the thin blanket of sleep isn't a rooster or a cry of alarm. It is the slow, methodical tolling of a church bell, a sound so deeply woven into the fabric of your morning that you barely register it consciously. It's a heavy, iron heartbeat for the city, counting out the hours before they've even properly begun. You lie still for a moment, on a mattress stuffed with straw that rustles with every slight shift of your weight. The air in your small room is cold, carrying the damp, mineral scent of old stone and the faint, lingering ghost of last night's wood smoke. A sliver of pale gray light forces its way through a crack in the wooden shutter, painting a single, dusty stripe across the rough-hewn floorboards. This is the morning. There is no sudden awakening here, only a slow, cold seeping of reality back into your bones. You push aside the coarse wool blanket, the chill immediately raising goosebumps on your skin. The floor is like a slab of ice beneath your bare feet. As you dress, your fingers fumble with the simple laces of your tunic, your movements deliberate in the gloom. This is a world without mirrors, so your reflection exists only in the minds of others, a dangerous and unreliable place for it to be. You perform your morning prayer, the Latin words a familiar, comforting murmur in the quiet room. Yet even here alone, the performance feels necessary. You press your forehead to the cold floor, not just out of piety, but out of a deep, instinctual habit of caution. Piety is a shield, a form of public insurance against suspicion. Every genuflection, every muttered verse, is a deposit into the account of your own salvation, an account you pray is never audited. Stepping out of your dwelling, the air outside is a physical assault on your senses. The narrow cobblestone street, still slick with a fine morning mist that blurs the edges of the world, smells of 1,000 lives lived too closely together. There is the sharp tang of urine in the gutters, the rich aroma of bread baking in a communal oven down the lane, the ever-present cloying smell of unwashed humanity, and the thick, heavy smoke from countless small fires. You pull your cloak tighter, the damp wool scratching at your neck. The city is waking up around you. You hear the rumble of a wooden cart's wheels on the uneven stones, the distant, rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer, and the low murmur of conversation spoken from behind cupped hands. No one shouts. No one laughs too loudly. Joy, like wealth, is a thing best kept private, lest it attract the wrong kind of attention. You make your way toward the market square, the heart of this sprawling, anxious organism. Here, the low hum of the city crescendos into a chaotic symphony. Chickens squawk in wooden cages, merchants hawk their wares in strained, repetitive chants, and the air grows thick with the smell of bruised fruit, raw meat, and fragrant spices that feel impossibly exotic in this world of damp gray stone. You move through the crowd, your shoulders brushing against strangers. Every face is a story, but you have learned not to read them too closely. You watch a neighbor haggling over the price of fish, her voice a little too sharp, her gestures a little too grand. You wonder, for a fleeting moment, what the fishmonger sees. A desperate woman. Or a woman whose passions are not properly contained. It's a terrifyingly fine line. Your own interactions are muted, your words carefully chosen, your gaze kept respectfully lowered. The market is a theater, and you are all actors playing the part of the unremarkable, devout citizen. Afternoon arrives, and with it, the sun finally burns through the persistent morning fog. It's a weak, watery sun, but it's enough to cast long, distorted shadows down the alleyways. You find yourself sitting on a low stone wall, watching children chase a stray dog in the plaza. Their laughter is pure and unrestrained, a sound so alien it's almost alarming. You think about your own habits, the small rituals that define your life. You recall a hushed conversation you overheard weeks ago, that the simple act of bathing too frequently, of insisting on clean linens, was seen as a sign of heresy, a lingering custom of the Moors and Jews who were so recently expelled. And so you, like everyone else, have learned to live with a certain level of grime. It's a peculiar armor of filth, a public declaration of your unimpeachable Christian soul. To be clean is to be suspect. To be dirty is to be safe. It's a logic so twisted, it almost makes a perfect, terrifying sense. Feel free to like this journey, but only if you truly enjoy the descent into the shadows. As the day wanes, the sun's warmth fades completely, and a familiar, bone-deep chill returns to the air. You see him then. Not a soldier, not a priest in grand vestments, but something far more unsettling. A man you know only by reputation, a asterisk familiar, a lay informant for the Holy Office. He is dressed just like everyone else, a bland face in the crowd, but his eyes are different. They don't just see, they assess, they catalog. He is taking a kind of silent inventory of the city's souls. He isn't looking at you, not directly, but you feel the weight of his presence, a cold spot in the afternoon air. Your heart begins a slow, heavy drumbeat against your ribs. You have done nothing wrong. You have done nothing wrong today. You repeat the words in your mind, a desperate mantra against a nameless dread. This is the true nature of the fear. Not a sudden terror, but a slow, corrosive anxiety that eats away at the edges of every normal day. Night falls not like a blanket, but like a stain, the darkness pooling first in the narrowest alleys before consuming the sky. The city transforms. The sounds of commerce are replaced by the clinking of tankards and the low thrum of conversation spilling from the open doors of taverns. You are inside one now, the air thick with the sweet, sticky smell of cheap wine and the greasy aroma of roasting meat. The flickering candlelight makes monsters of the shadows on the wall. A man at a nearby table tells a joke, and the laughter that follows is loud but brittle. And he knows that one misplaced word, one joke that strays too close to sacrilege, could be a seed of accusation that will sprout in a dark, windowless room weeks from now. You sip your watered-down wine, making it last, a silent participant in a dangerous game of forced camaraderie. You walk home through streets that are now almost entirely dark and deserted. Your footsteps echo loudly, unnervingly against the stone buildings. The city at night feels like a tomb, holding its breath. Finally, you reach the sanctuary of your own small room, barring the heavy wooden door behind you. For a moment, you feel a wave of relief. But it's fleeting. Is this room truly a sanctuary? You think of the book you keep hidden, tucked away beneath a loose floorboard. It's not a forbidden text, not a work of heresy. It's a simple collection of poems about love and nature. But it is not a prayer book, and in this world, anything that is not explicitly for God can be seen as being against Him. The silence of your room is no longer comforting. It's the silence of a place where your very thoughts feel loud enough to be overheard, recorded, and filed away for future reference. As you lie again on your straw mattress, the day's anxieties return as ghostly visitors in the dark. You don't fear the flames of the auto-da-fe. That is a distant, theatrical horror for the truly damned. No, the fear is quieter, more intimate. It's the fear of a neighbor's envy, a merchant's grudge, a stranger's misinterpretation of a glance. It's the fear of the unseen clerk, his face illuminated by a single candle, dipping his quill into a pot of ink and scratching your name onto a piece of parchment. The true horror of the Inquisition is not the scream, but the meticulous, passionless scrape of that quill. It is the slow, bureaucratic journey from a whispered word to an official file, a ledger that charts the debts of your soul. As you drift into a restless sleep, we invite you to comment with the exact time you finally gave in to the quiet darkness. The world you inhabit, the world that grinds on with or without your consent, is a machine of relentless, repetitive motion. It is a world built not of grand pronouncements and heroic deeds, but of the accumulated weight of a billion mundane actions, each one a tiny, weary prayer offered up to the god of survival. Before any file can be opened, before any ink can be spilt to record a deviation of the soul, there is the simple, brutal arithmetic of the day. There is the work. It is the great unacknowledged faith, the one true church to which everyone belongs. It is a worship conducted with aching backs and calloused hands, a liturgy of sweat and exhaustion that leaves little room for the kinds of thoughts that attract unwanted attention. This is the bedrock of your reality, the dense, heavy soil in which the seeds of fear are planted. Imagine, for a moment, you are not in your small room, but descending. You are being lowered on a creaking wooden winch into the black, hungry mouth of the earth. You are a miner. The air grows cold and damp, clinging to your skin, carrying the scent of wet stone and something ancient, something that has never known the sun. Your world shrinks to the trembling halo of a single tallow candle, its weak flame casting monstrous, dancing shadows against the rock. The only sound is the rhythmic, percussive trinity of your labor, the sharp ring of the pickaxe striking the ore vein, the grating scrape of the shovel against the stone floor, and the ragged, wet sound of your own breathing, magnified in the suffocating silence. You work for hours, your muscles screaming, your lungs filling with a fine, sharp dust that will, in time, turn them to stone. Your break is not a respite. It is merely a pause in the rhythm of your suffering. You sit on a cold, damp rock, the darkness around you so absolute it feels like a physical weight. You gnaw on a piece of bread that is as hard as the earth you excavate, washing it down with water from a leather flask that tastes of rust and mildew. You think of Mateo, who worked this same vein last year. You remember his cough, a dry, rattling sound that seemed to shake his entire body, until one day he simply did not come back. No one spoke of it. To complain of the dust, of the ache, of the inevitable end, would be to question the station God has assigned you. And so you chew your stale bread in silence, your thoughts as dark and confined as the tunnel around you. This silence is your shield, a testament to your uncomplaining piety, a performance for an audience that might not even be there. The winch groans, and you are hauled back toward the surface, a ghost returning to a world of pale, watery light. You emerge blinking, your face caked in a mask of grime and sweat, your body a single, throbbing ache. You are paid a few coins, barely enough to buy the bread you will eat in the dark tomorrow. As you walk home, you see a familiar of the Holy Office speaking quietly with a neighbor. You lower your gaze, you make yourself smaller. You try to become just another shadow in the twilight. You know that a dispute over a shared well, a perceived slight, or a word of complaint about your meager pay, overheard by the wrong ears, could be twisted. It could become a whisper about dissatisfaction, and dissatisfaction is the first cousin of heresy. Your exhaustion is your only alibi. A man this tired has no energy left for dissent. Now, leave the mine and enter a different kind of confinement. You are in a long, low-ceilinged room with no windows, the air thick, with the smell of lanolin, sweat, and floating dust motes that dance in the slivers of light from a few sputtering candles. You are a spinner, and your world is governed by the sound of the wheel. It is a constant, hypnotic whir, a sound that fills your ears, settles in your bones, and follows you into your thin, restless dreams. Your fingers, raw and numb, expertly draft the greasy wool from the distaff, feeding it to the spindle. It is a delicate, precise motion that you have repeated so many thousands of times it has become a part of you, an extension of your own nervous system. Your back is a rod of fire from bending over the wheel, your shoulders a knot of hardened muscle. You watch the thread grow, a seemingly endless strand of gray or brown piling up on the bobbin. It feels like you are spinning the very hours of your own life into this coarse, unremarkable yarn. You see Alara, a girl of no more than 15, working the wheel next to you. A single tear traces a clean path through the grime on her cheek. Perhaps her fingers are bleeding, or perhaps her mind has simply drifted to a place of green fields and open sky, a place that makes this dusty, suffocating room unbearable. But she does not sob, she does not stop. She just lets the silent tear fall as the wheel turns and turns and turns. To stop working, even for a moment of grief, is to be noticed. And to be noticed is to be questioned. Why is she sad? Is her faith wavering? Does she not thank God for the opportunity to perform this honest labor? Your meal is a thin gruel, eaten quickly while leaning against the wall, the whirring of the wheels never truly ceasing. It is a brief, tasteless interruption in a day defined by a single sound, a single motion. As you work, you recall the story of a woman in the next village, a weaver, who was known for the beautiful, intricate patterns she created. Her skill was undeniable, but it became a source of whispers. Such artistry, some said, was not natural. It was too perfect, too beautiful. It hinted at a pride that bordered on vanity, or worse, a knowledge that did not come from a righteous place. She was eventually questioned, her looms silenced. You look down at your own simple, sturdy thread. It is plain, it is unremarkable, and in its utter lack of distinction there is a profound and desperate safety. Let us leave the drone of the spinners and step into the blistering, suffocating inferno of the bakery. The moment you enter, the heat hits you like a physical blow, a dry, scorching wave that sucks the moisture from your lungs. The air is white with flour, a fine powder that coats every surface, fills your nostrils, and grinds between your teeth. You are a baker, and your day began long before the first church bell tolled, in a darkness illuminated only by the hungry orange glow of the massive brick oven. Your work is a battle of brute force. You heave sacks of flour that seem to weigh as much as a man, your muscles straining, your joints groaning in protest. You are perpetually covered in a paste of sweat and flour, a second skin of dough. The kneading is a violent, rhythmic dance. You slam the massive lump of dough onto the floured wooden table. You punch it down, you fold it, you turn it, you repeat. The slap of the dough is a heavy, wet metronome counting out the hours of your life. Your arms and shoulders burn with a deep, liquid fire. This is not the gentle, therapeutic baking of a future age. This is a primal struggle to subdue a living thing, to beat it into submission before the yeast gives it too much life. You see old Tomas, the master baker, his face a roadmap of wrinkles and burned scars, making the sign of the cross over a trough of rising dough. It is a gesture of piety, yes, but it is also an insurance policy. If a batch should fail to rise, if the bread should sour, it cannot be said that he did not invoke God's blessing. The peak of the day is the oven itself. You use a long wooden peel to slide the pale-shaped loaves into the roaring, incandescent heart of the beast. The wave of heat that billows out is so intense it scorches your eyebrows and makes your skin feel tight and brittle. You work in a state of controlled panic, sliding the loaves in, turning them, pulling them out at the perfect moment. A moment too soon, and the bread is doughy. A moment too late, and it is a charred, useless brick, a burnt offering to the god of incompetence. Your meal is, ironically, the heel of a loaf from yesterday, hard and dry, chewed while you watch the next batch rise. You provide the very staff of life for your community, yet you know that your livelihood rests on a knife's edge. A single accusation of selling underweight loaves or of hoarding flour to drive up prices could bring an inquiry. And an inquiry, even if it finds nothing, leaves a stain, like a scorch mark on a perfectly baked crust. Now, let the smell of baking bread be replaced by the sharp, briny scent of salt and fish. You are on a small wooden boat, tossed by the cold, gray swells of the sea just before dawn. You are a fisherman. The air is frigid, and a constant freezing spray soaks your woolen tunic, chilling you to the bone. Your hands are the color of raw meat, swollen and split from hauling the coarse, heavy nets out of the unforgiving water. The work is a gamble, a constant negotiation with a force far greater than yourself. You cast the nets out, a prayer on your lips, and then you wait. The waiting is a form of tension, a quiet, anxious stillness in a world of violent motion. You watch the sky, you watch the waves, you listen to the mournful cry of the gulls. The hauling is the true test. You and your shipmates pull together, your feet slipping on the wet deck, your backs screaming in protest. The net feels impossibly heavy, a dead weight fighting to return to the depths. Then you see it, the frantic, silver flashing in the tangled mesh. A good catch. The deck is soon covered in a writhing, suffocating mass of fish. The air fills with the smell of the sea, of fish scales, and of death. You work quickly, sorting the catch, your hands numb, your movements automatic. You see your friend Javier pull a strange creature from the net, a fish with an unnervingly human-like face and black, vacant eyes. He stares at it for a second, his face a mask of fear and awe. Then, without a word, he makes the sign of the cross and hurls it back into the sea. You both know why. To bring such a thing ashore would be to invite endless questions. It would be an omen, a portent. The priests would be summoned. It would be seen as a sign of some corruption in the sea, or, worse, in the souls of the men who pulled it forth. It is a thing that does not fit the established order of God's creation, and anything that does not fit is an object of suspicion. So you pretend you saw nothing. The sea offers up its bounty, and sometimes it offers up its nightmares. You learn to take the former and discard the latter, with no questions asked. Your short, precarious life depends on this willful ignorance. Your meal is a piece of dried, salted fish, its flesh tough as leather, chewed as you stare at the horizon, hoping the next haul doesn't bring any more theological complications. From the open sea we now shrink your world to a space no wider than your own shoulders. You are a child, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, but your childhood is a distant memory. You are a chimney sweep. Your master pushes you toward a dark, soot-stained hole at the base of a hearth. The smell of old smoke, of creosote, and of something sour, like fear, fills your nose. You are stripped to your trousers, and you begin to climb, your small, bony knees and elbows scraping against the rough, abrasive brick. The darkness is absolute. It is a vertical grave. You inch your way upward, coughing, your lungs burning, dislodging thick cakes of soot that rain down on you, filling your eyes, your mouth, your very soul. Your only thought is to keep moving, to not get stuck. You have heard the stories of boys who panicked, who became wedged in the narrow flue, their muffled cries fading as they slowly suffocated in the dark. The terror is a cold, hard knot in your stomach. You are not a boy. You are a human brush, a living tool used to scour the black, greasy sins from the city's arteries. You can hear the muffled sounds of the household through the brick, a woman humming, a man shouting, a baby crying. You are a ghost inside their walls, an unseen witness to their lives, yet you are less than human to them. You exist only to perform this single, terrifying task. Finally, your hand bursts through the top of the chimney into the gray, open sky. It is a moment of rebirth. You gasp the cold, clean air before descending back into the suffocating blackness. When you emerge from the hearth, you are no longer a child. You are a small, dark creature, a thing made of soot and terror, your face a mask from which only your wide, frightened eyes are visible. You are given a crust of bread, which is immediately blackened by your filthy hands, and perhaps a single, tiny coin. As you follow your master to the next house, you endure a fit of coughing that shakes your entire frail body. You are an expert in the city's secrets, in the architecture of its hearths, but your own small, desperate story is one that will never be recorded, filed, or even noticed. Now, you are back on the ground, a man whose entire existence is tied to the slow, relentless movement of a cart. You are a carter. Your throne is a splintered wooden plank, your world the broad, sweating back of the horse in front of you, and the monotonous, unchanging route you travel every day. The soundtrack of your life is the rhythmic backquote, clop-clop backquote of hooves on cobblestone, the loud, agonizing groan of an ungreased axle, and your own voice shouting commands at your beast. You transport the raw materials of life, sacks of grain from the countryside, barrels of wine from the docks, blocks of stone for the new cathedral. You are the city's circulatory system, a slow-moving corpuscle in its stone veins. The smell of horse manure, sweat, and damp wool is your constant companion. The work is mind-numbingly repetitive. From the East Gate to the Market Square, from the Market Square to the river, from the river back to the East Gate, the faces you see become a blur, the buildings a familiar, unchanging backdrop. Your body is shaped by the work. Your hands are thick, calloused claws from gripping the reins, your back permanently curved from years of sitting on the hard plank. A sudden lurch of the cart sends a jolt of pain up your spine. You barely notice it anymore. It is simply the way things are. Your meal is a hunk of cheese and an onion, eaten without stopping, the reins looped over your knee. The horse gets more rest than you do. One afternoon, a wheel on your cart, old and brittle, finally splinters in a narrow street, blocking the path of a minor religious procession. The frustration on the faces of the acolytes quickly curdles into something else: suspicion. You fumble with the repairs, your hands clumsy with panic, acutely aware of their cold, judgmental stares. Your broken wheel is not just an inconvenience. It is an interruption of God's work. Your incompetence is an insult. You mutter a stream of apologies and prayers, your heart hammering against your ribs. You know that this small, mundane failure could be noted. The carter who blocked the procession, a man of careless habits. And from there, it is a terrifyingly short journey to being a man of careless faith. Every day is a performance of anonymous competence, and you have just forgotten your lines. Finally, imagine yourself by the river, in a place of cold water and hard labor. You are a woman, a laundress, and your work is never done. You stand knee-deep in the frigid, fast-moving current, or kneel at the edge of a great stone basin in a public washhouse. The air smells of damp earth, harsh lye soap that eats away at your skin, and the sour scent of dirty linen. Your hands are perpetually red, raw, and swollen, the skin cracked and bleeding. Your work is a ritual of purification, but it is a brutal one. You beat the clothes against the smooth, worn stones, the percussive backquote, thwack, 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 backquote, echoing across the water, a sound of relentless, punishing effort. Your back and arms ache with a fire that never fully extinguishes. This place is the city's nerve center for gossip. As you scrub and wring and beat, you listen. The whispers travel along the riverbank like the current itself. You learn who is in debt, whose husband drinks too much, whose daughter has a lingering glance. You see the evidence of the city's life in the stains you are tasked to remove. The wine from a celebration, the blood from a brawl or a childbirth, the sweat of a fever. You are the keeper of intimate, dangerous secrets. You learn to wash the linens and hold your tongue, because the same women you work alongside are the ones who might report a stray word. One day, while washing the linens of a wealthy merchant's wife, you notice the delicate lace on a chemise is torn, and there are faint brownish stains near the collar. You scrub at them, your heart beating a little faster. You know the merchant is a cruel man. Your mind creates a story, a narrative of quiet suffering that you can never speak aloud. To mention the stains, to ask about them, would be an accusation. To remain silent feels like complicity. You scrub with a frantic energy, as if you could wash away, not just the physical mark, but the troubling knowledge it represents. You are cleaning the public face of the city, scrubbing away the evidence of its private sins, all while knowing that your own soul is being watched for the slightest smudge. The river that cleanses the city's linens does not discriminate. It also carries away the evidence of a different kind of grime, the byproducts of a world without caution, a world where your own labor is the most likely thing to kill you. The physical dangers of your life are so constant, so woven into the fabric of the day, that they cease to be remarkable. They are simply the cost of breathing. A man building the new cathedral does not fear a fall in the same way he fears an accusation. He sees the fall as an act of God, a sudden and perhaps even merciful conclusion. An accusation, however, is an act of man, and there is no mercy in that. Every snapped rope, every collapsing trench, every splash of molten metal is a small, visceral sermon on the fragility of the flesh, a daily reminder that your body is merely a temporary vessel, easily broken. Imagine you are a stonemason, perched hundreds of feet in the air on a rickety wooden scaffold, the city sprawling below you like a child's forgotten toy. The wind is a relentless bully, trying to pry you from your foothold. You are carving the face of a gargoyle, your chisel ringing against the stone, the sound swallowed by the immense emptiness around you. A fellow worker, a man named Pedro, loses his footing a few feet away. There is no shout, only a brief, surprised grunt as he disappears from the edge of your vision. You don't look down. You simply pause, make the sign of the cross, and continue your work. Later you will hear the sickening, wet thud from the courtyard below. No one will stop working. His soul, they will say, has ascended to the heaven he was helping to build. It is a convenient and tidy promotion, and it requires no paperwork. Or perhaps you work in the dyer's quarter, a part of the city that announces itself from 3 streets away. The air here is a thick chemical soup, stinging your eyes and catching in the back of your throat. You spend your days plunging bolts of wool into enormous steaming vats. The beautiful, vibrant colors, the crimsons, the deep blues, the brilliant yellows, are born from a toxic alchemy of metallic salts, stale urine collected from public barrels, and other substances you would rather not name. Your hands are permanently stained a mottled rainbow of colors, but beneath the skin, a slower, more sinister process is at work. You have a persistent cough, and your teeth are loose in their gums. You are painting beautiful things for the wealthy, while slowly, methodically, erasing yourself from the world. It's a slow-motion accident, a death spread out over a decade. The poisons you work with are at least honest about their intentions. They do not pretend to be nourishment. The same cannot be said for the food you eat. The trust you place in the baker or the butcher is a far greater leap of faith than any tenet of the Catechism. Adulteration is not just a crime against the purse. It is an art form, a secret and cynical craft. Every loaf of bread is a gamble. The baker, seeking to stretch his flour and his profits, might add a generous portion of chalk, or fine white clay, or even plaster dust. You feel it as you chew, a subtle, gritty texture that you have learned to ignore. It is the taste of commerce. It fills your stomach but provides no strength, and over time it creates a hard, painful knot in your gut, a small, personal construction project of deceit. The milk you buy for your children is often a thin, bluish lie, stretched with water from the river and whitened with a dash of chalk to restore its virtuous appearance. The beer in the tavern, the great social lubricant, is frequently a chemical concoction. Brewers add things to make a weak brew seem strong, to create a frothy head where none should exist. Some use henbane or other dubious herbs to give it a more potent, narcotic effect. A shortcut to intoxication that occasionally becomes a shortcut to the afterlife. The butcher is the greatest artist of all, a master of illusion. He can take a piece of meat that is days past its prime, gray and slick with the first blush of decay, and restore its youthful vigor with a wash of animal blood or beet juice. A clever arrangement of spices can mask the scent of putrefaction, transforming a potential source of plague into a savory evening meal. When the inevitable sickness comes, from the bread, the meat, or the simple grinding exhaustion of your life, you are faced with another set of dangers masquerading as cures. You might visit an apothecary, a man whose shop smells of dust, dried herbs, and a faint, unsettling sweetness. He offers you remedies that defy all logic, yet are embraced with the desperation of the damned. He might sell you a small packet of powdered mummy, scraped from the wrappings of an Egyptian corpse, believed to hold the secrets of preservation. He might offer you usnea*, the pale green moss scraped from the skull of a man who died a violent death, the logic being that the moss has absorbed the man's life force at its most potent moment. You could be prescribed a potion containing woodlice, earthworms, or the dried excrement of a specific animal, all chosen according to a complex and utterly mad system of correspondences. If your ailment is of the head, you might be told to eat walnuts, because the nut resembles a tiny brain. The most common cure for almost any malady, from a simple fever to the deepest melancholy, is bloodletting. The barber surgeon will arrive with his gleaming lancets and bowls and proceed to drain you of your vitality, believing he is also draining the bad humors that cause the sickness. You lie there, weakened and pale, putting your faith in a theory that is as elegant as it is deadly. To question these practices is to question the wisdom of the ancients, and by extension the established order of things. Imagine you are careful. You have seen what the butcher sells, and you have a sensitive stomach. You politely refuse to eat pork at a neighbor's feast. It is a sensible choice, a minor act of self-preservation. But your refusal is noted. It is remembered. It is whispered. The family of Elvira del Campo was questioned for this very reason. Why would a good Christian refuse pork, a food so explicitly forbidden to Jews and Muslims? Your sensible dietary habit is not seen as wisdom, but as a sign of a hidden, heretical identity. A single piece of sausage, uneaten, becomes a key piece of evidence in the meticulous file being compiled on the state of your soul. Your health is a secondary concern to the health of your orthodoxy. Or perhaps, in the deep exhaustion of your sleep, you have strange, vivid dreams. You dream you are flying out of your body, joining others to battle against evil witches to protect the village's harvest. You speak of it, perhaps foolishly, to a friend. You think of yourself as a soldier for God, a benandante asterisk, a good walker, doing holy work. When this story reaches the ears of a clerk of the Holy Office, your words are twisted through the filter of his own rigid beliefs. Your fantastical battle for the crops becomes, in his neat spidery script, a confession of attending a demonic Sabbath. Your folk magic, your agricultural dream quest, is reclassified as witchcraft. The distance between a local superstition and a capital crime is the width of a quill pen. In this world, every misfortune, from a broken bone to a spoiled batch of milk, can be interpreted as a sign of supernatural interference. The line between an accident and a curse is blurry, and often drawn by the finger of a suspicious neighbor. Your body, your food, your very dreams are all potential sources of damnation, not just in the next life, but in this one. The greatest absurdity is that the mundane, physical terrors you face every day are the very things that can feed the bureaucratic, spiritual terror of the Inquisition. After all, it is much easier to prosecute a demon for causing your stomach to ache than it is to regulate the butcher who sold you rotten meat. The body, you have learned, is a terrible accountant. It keeps a meticulous, unforgiving ledger of every hardship, every sleepless night, every mouthful of questionable food. It records debts in the form of a lingering cough, a pain in the joints, a weakness that settles deep in your bones. These are the mundane consequences, the quiet personal apocalypses that play out in the theater of your own flesh. Long before any clerk of the Holy Office takes an interest in your soul, your own body may have already passed a sentence. The first sign is often a cough, a small, dry thing you try to smother in your sleeve. But it persists, a tiny, insistent ghost rattling in your chest. Soon, it is joined by a fever that comes and goes like an unwelcome guest, leaving you drenched in a cold, greasy sweat in the dead of night. This is the beginning of the consumption, the great wasting. It is a slow, methodical erasure, a disease that dines on you one microscopic bite at a time, leaving you hollowed out, a fragile, breathing shell. Your friends and neighbors begin to look at you with a new kind of pity, mixed with a primal, instinctual fear. They step back when you cough. They hold their breath when you pass. You are already becoming a ghost, your presence a reminder of a fate they pray to avoid. Then there is the jail fever, the typhus, a sickness born of close quarters and the tiny, unseen tyrants that live in the seams of your clothes. It does not creep. It descends like a hammer blow. One day you are working, the next you are on your straw mattress, your skin burning, as if you have been laid on hot coals. Your mind becomes a treacherous landscape of shifting shadows and whispering voices. The world dissolves into a fever dream, a terrifying and nonsensical play in which you are the unwilling star. A red rash blooms across your chest and back, like a field of cursed flowers. Those who care for you will speak of your delirious ramblings, the strange, blasphemous things you might shout at the ceiling in the dead of night. And they will worry, not just for your life but for your soul. Because even in the throes of a fever that has unmoored your reason, your words can be harvested. They can be collected, recorded, and presented later as the sober confessions of a heretical mind. The disease attacks your body, but it makes your very thoughts a liability. Worst of all, perhaps, is the speckled monster, the smallpox. It begins with a fever and an ache so profound it feels as if your bones are being ground to dust. Then, the first spots appear. Soon your entire body is a canvas for its horrific art, covered in raised, fluid-filled pustules. The itching is a torment, a fire beneath the skin that drives you to the brink of madness. The smell that comes from your own body is something foul and sweet, the smell of corruption, of flesh turning against itself. If you survive, and many do not, you are left a changed person. Your face, the very map of your identity, is transformed into a cratered alien landscape, a permanent testament to your ordeal. You might be blinded in one eye, your voice a permanent, raspy whisper. You have passed through the inferno, but you carry its scorch marks for all to see. And in a world where physical deformities are so often seen as a sign of inner corruption, a mark of sin, your survival is a complicated blessing. You are alive, yes, but you now wear a mask that invites suspicion and whispers. And so, when the body's ledger is full, when the debts come due, you may find yourself carried to a place that is not quite a home and not quite a tomb, but something in between. You are brought to a hospital. Forget any modern notion of a place of healing. This is a warehouse for the dying. A great stone hall of suffering, run by a religious order whose piety is far more robust than its understanding of medicine. The moment you are carried through the door, the air itself assaults you. It is a thick, complex miasma, a palpable atmosphere composed of stale sweat, unwashed bodies, the sharp, metallic tang of blood, the sourness of vomit, and the cloying, sweet smell of decay, all overlaid with the faint, hopeful scent of incense that fools no one. This is the smell of massed, institutionalized misery, a smell that clings to the stones, to the blankets, to the very souls of those who lie within. The sound is the next thing you notice. It is a constant, low symphony of human suffering, a chorus that never ceases, day or night. There is the wet, ragged cough of the man with consumption in the cot to your left. There is the low, steady moaning of a woman with a fever across the aisle. There is the occasional, sharp cry of pain as a wound is dressed or a broken bone is set without the mercy of anesthetic. And beneath it all, there is the constant, soft murmur of prayers, the sound of rosary beads clicking like the patient mandibles of insects as nuns and friars move between the beds, offering comfort for the soul when there is none to be had for the body. It is a soundscape so completely devoid of joy that it seems to suck the very will to live from the air. You are laid upon a narrow cot, one of perhaps 50, in a long, cavernous hall. The mattress is a thin sack of straw, compressed and hardened by the bodies of countless predecessors. It rustles with more than just straw. You can feel the faint, skittering movements of its other inhabitants. The blanket is a single sheet of coarse, gray wool, stiff with the accumulated grime of years and smelling faintly of every person who has ever sweat or bled or died beneath it. You are not alone in this bed. You are sharing it with at least one other person, a stranger whose feverish heat and shallow breathing are now intimately a part of your own space. In many hospitals, like the famous Hôtel Dieu in Paris, it was not uncommon to see 4 or even 6 people to a bed, heads and feet alternating. A grotesque and intimate parody of a family. The day begins before dawn, not with a gentle awakening, but with the clatter of wooden buckets and the brusque movements of the lay helpers. There is no privacy here. A screen is not a concept that has yet been invented. Your bodily functions are a public affair, managed with a resigned and weary sigh by an overworked novice. The linens, if they are changed at all, are replaced with others that are merely less soiled, still damp from a cold water wash in the river. The morning light struggles to penetrate the high, grimy windows, illuminating a world of dust motes dancing in the gloom, each one a tiny planet in a galaxy of filth. The light reveals the faces of your fellow sufferers, pale and drawn, their eyes either wide with fear or dull with resignation. A bell rings, and it is time for the morning's meal. A novice comes by with a large, steaming pot. You are handed a wooden bowl of gruel, a thin, grayish porridge of oats or barley boiled in water. It is bland, tasteless, and possesses the consistency of watery mud. This is not food meant to nourish or strengthen. It is a minimal offering, a gesture intended to keep the spark of life from extinguishing for one more day. You eat it slowly, the rough spoon scraping the bottom of the bowl, because you know it is all you will receive until evening. You watch the man sharing your bed, too weak to lift his head, have the gruel spooned into his mouth by a nun, much of it dribbling down his chin onto the already stained blanket. Later in the morning, the physician might make his rounds. He is a man of immense and misplaced confidence, dressed in dark robes that set him apart from the lesser mortals. He does not touch you. He stands at a respectable distance from your cot, perhaps holding a pomander of fragrant herbs to his nose to ward off the stench of his own patients. He will look at you, assess your color, and ask a few questions of the attending friar. He speaks in Latin, a language that renders your own body a mystery to you, a subject of a conversation in which you have no part. His diagnosis is a performance of ancient wisdom, based on the theory of the four humors. Your fever is an excess of yellow bile. Your cough, a surfeit of phlegm. His prescription is almost always the same, a trinity of torment: purging, puking, or bleeding. If you are to be purged, you are given a violent laxative, a concoction of herbs that will wring your insides out, leaving you weak and dehydrated, but supposedly cleansed of the offending humor. If you are to vomit, you are given an emetic that induces heaving fits, a bodily earthquake that promises to expel the sickness from your stomach. These are seen not as side effects, but as the cure itself. The more violent the body's reaction, the more effective the treatment is considered to be. It is a medical philosophy that believes the best way to save a drowning man is to hold his head more firmly under the water. But the most common, the most theatrical, is the bloodletting. The barber surgeon is summoned, a man whose skills with a razor are considered perfectly transferable to human veins. He arrives with his terrifyingly sharp lancets and a brass bowl. He will tie a strip of leather tightly around your arm, and the vein will rise, a small blue river of your own life. With a quick, practiced flick of his wrist, he makes the incision. Your blood, dark and shockingly red, streams into the bowl. You watch it, mesmerized and horrified, as your own vitality drains away. The surgeon watches the color and consistency of the blood, nodding sagely, claiming to read the secrets of your illness in its flow. The goal is to remove a pint, sometimes more, until you feel faint. This lightheadedness is not seen as a dangerous sign of blood loss, but as a sign that the humors are rebalancing. You are being cured by being brought to the very edge of death. After the physician's dramatic but brief appearance, the long, slow hours of the afternoon begin. There is nothing to do but lie there and listen to the symphony of suffering around you. Time itself seems to slow down, to congeal, each minute an hour, each hour a day. You watch a sliver of sunlight creep across the stone floor, a slow, golden snail, marking the passage of your life. You might see a wealthy patroness of the hospital make a visit, her fine clothes a jarring splash of color in this monochrome world. She walks down the aisle, her face a mask of pious concern, distributing small bread rolls or words of comfort, a performance of charity that lasts no more than 10 minutes before she retreats back to her clean, comfortable world. The religious life of the hospital is its true purpose. It is a machine for saving souls, and the repair of the body is a secondary, almost incidental concern. Friars are a constant presence, moving from bed to bed, hearing confessions from those lucid enough to speak. Your illness is framed not as a biological event, but as a spiritual trial. It is a test of your faith, a punishment for your sins, an opportunity to purify your soul through suffering. You are encouraged to contemplate your own mortality, to make peace with God, to prepare your soul for its imminent journey. The focus is so heavily on the next world that it often feels as if they are actively trying to hurry you into it. As evening approaches, the gloom inside the hall deepens. Tallow candles are lit, casting long, flickering shadows that dance on the high ceilings like demons. The air grows colder. This is the time of day when fevers tend to spike. The moaning intensifies. You hear the man in your bed begin to murmur, his breathing becoming a shallow, rattling gasp. A priest is summoned, a man with a solemn face and practiced, gentle hands. He brings the holy oils for the last rites. You watch, pretending not to, as he anoints your bedmate's forehead and hands, whispering the final prayers of absolution. It is a quiet, dignified, and terrifyingly routine procedure. Night in the hospital is a different realm of existence. The thin blanket offers little protection against the bone-deep chill that seems to rise from the stone floor. The darkness is not complete. It is a murky, gray twilight, punctuated by the sputtering flames of a few candles, leaving most of the hall in deep shadow. This is when the fear is most potent. The sounds of the city die down, leaving only the internal sounds of the ward. The coughing fits seem to grow more violent, more desperate in the silence. You can hear the scuttling of rats in the rafters, and beneath the floorboards, the true, eternal residents of this place. Sleep is not a refuge, but a series of brief, feverish chapters, punctuated by the sounds of someone else's pain. Sometime in the deepest part of the night, you are awakened by a sudden stillness. The rattling breath of the man beside you has stopped. He is gone. There is no alarm, no rush of activity. A novice, making his rounds, simply notes the fact with a quiet nod. Two others arrive with a simple wooden stretcher. They wrap the body in its own filthy blanket, a final, unceremonious swaddling cloth. You watch as they carry him away, his feet dangling limply over the edge. His space in the bed is now cold, an empty, hollowed-out spot that will be filled by a new sufferer before the sun rises. The hospital is a river, and the bodies are simply the current, flowing in one door and, eventually, out another. The mortality rate in such a place is not a statistic to be hidden. It is an accepted fact of life, almost a measure of the hospital's spiritual success. In a place like Florence during a plague year, the ledgers of a hospital might record over 10,000 deaths in a matter of months. To die here, under the care of the Church, having received the final sacraments, is considered a, quote, good death. It is a far better alternative than dying alone in an alleyway, your soul unshriven. The institution does not measure its success by how many people walk out its doors, but by how many souls it can usher into the gates of heaven. You are not a patient to be cured. You are a soul to be harvested. Of course, the hospital is a place of last resort. Before you submit to its institutional embrace, you might seek out other options. You could visit a local healer, a wise woman who lives on the edge of the village. Her home smells of drying herbs, wood smoke, and damp earth. Her knowledge is not from books, but from a tradition passed down through generations. She might give you a poultice of comfrey for a broken bone, or a tea of willow bark for your fever, remedies that, by sheer chance, sometimes actually work. But this is a dangerous transaction. Her knowledge of the natural world is a source of suspicion. Her remedies are seen as folk magic, a hair's breadth away from witchcraft. To seek her help is to risk being associated with her, to have your name linked to hers if she is ever questioned. For the women of your community, the most critical medical figure is the midwife. She is an essential, respected, and deeply feared member of society. She holds the power of life and death in her hands, presiding over the terrifying and bloody miracle of childbirth. She knows the secrets of women's bodies, secrets that make the male-dominated church and medical establishment deeply uncomfortable. She knows how to ease a difficult birth, how to turn a breech baby, how to staunch a hemorrhage with herbs and bindings. But she is also the one present when things go wrong. If a baby is born with a defect, or is stillborn, her presence transforms from one of aid to one of suspicion. Was it incompetence? Or was it a curse, a deliberate act of malice? The midwife walks a perpetual knife's edge between reverence and accusation. And when all the remedies of the physician, the healer, and the midwife have failed, there is the final, unavoidable destination, the cemetery. It is not a peaceful, manicured park for quiet contemplation. It is a crowded, functional plot of land, often in the very center of the city, abutting the church walls. The ground is churned and uneven, a testament to the constant digging of new graves. In times of plague, there is no room for individual plots. A great pit is dug, the plague pit, and the bodies are brought on carts, unceremoniously tipped over the edge, and covered with a dusting of quicklime to hasten their decay and mask the stench. Your own burial, should you be so fortunate as to merit one, will be a simple affair. Your body is washed and wrapped in a plain linen shroud. There are no expensive coffins for people like you. A coffin is a luxury for the rich, meant to preserve their earthly form for a little longer. You are simply lowered into the earth, the dirt of your ancestors embracing you. A simple wooden cross might mark the spot, but it will not last long. The sheer volume of the dead means that grave sites are constantly reused. Within a generation, the sexton's shovel, digging a grave for your great-grandchild, may turn up your own bones. Your physical remains become part of a communal, anonymous compost of humanity. Your individual story erased, absorbed back into the soil of the city you served. Your only hope for permanence lies not in a stone marker, but in the meticulous, unforgiving memory of the Church's paper archives. The world, you have come to understand, is governed not by laws written in stone, but by a vast and shifting web of unwritten rules. a code of conduct transmitted through sidelong glances, hushed warnings, and the stories told to frighten children. This is the realm of superstition, a parallel legal system that operates in the shadows of the church, and its verdicts are often just as final. You know not to sweep the dust from your home out the front door after dark, lest you sweep away your good fortune with it. You know that to praise a child's beauty too effusively without immediately touching them or saying, "God bless them," is to risk inviting the asterisk mal de ojo odo, the evil eye, a curse born of envy that can cause wasting sickness and inexplicable misfortune. You have seen mothers hastily make a horned gesture with their fingers, the mano cornuda, to ward off a glance they deemed suspect. These are not quaint customs. They are the frantic, everyday rituals of a people who believe they are living on a battlefield of invisible forces, where a spilled container of salt is not an inconvenience, but a breach in the spiritual wall, an open invitation for the devil to step inside. Your social life is a theatrical performance on a stage crowded with judges. Every interaction, no matter how trivial, is a scene to be analyzed. At the market, you do not simply buy bread. You engage in a carefully choreographed dance of deference and piety. You greet the baker's wife with the proper honorifics. You inquire after her family's health. You comment on the divine blessing of a sunny day. When she hands you the loaf, you might kiss it lightly. A small, public act of reverence for the staple that is so closely linked to the body of Christ. You watch others and they watch you. A woman who haggles too aggressively is seen as greedy and discontent. A man who pays without a word is seen as proud and aloof. You exist in a state of constant, low-grade social calculation, a human abacus, clicking away the potential consequences of every word, every gesture, every purchase. It is utterly, profoundly exhausting. Consider the ritual of a wedding. It is less a celebration of love and more a public audit of two families, standing, wealth, and, most importantly, their unimpeachable orthodoxy. You watch the procession snake through the narrow streets. The bride, her face a mask of calculated modesty, walks with her eyes fixed on the ground. Her dress is fine, but not too fine, a signal of prosperity without the sin of vanity. The music from a single lute is joyful, but not raucous enough to be considered pagan. At the feast that follows, you sit on a hard wooden bench, the room thick with the smells of roasting meat, spilled wine, and nervous sweat. You eat the food that is offered, making sure to visibly enjoy the roasted pig, a powerful and public rejection of Jewish and Muslim custom. You raise your cup when a toast is made to the couple's fertility and faith, your smile a carefully constructed thing, a mask of communal joy that hides the private anxiety of being observed. A funeral is the wedding's dark twin, another public performance with an even stricter set of rules. When a neighbor dies, grief must be displayed, but it must be the correct kind of grief. You follow the small procession to the churchyard, the air heavy with the scent of incense and freshly turned earth. The widow's cries are loud, but they are stylized, a ritualized wailing that follows a familiar cadence. It is a sorrow that is safely contained within the bounds of tradition. To weep too little would suggest a cold heart, or, worse, a lack of faith in the resurrection. To weep too much, to rage against the heavens, would be to question the wisdom of God's plan, a subtle but dangerous form of blasphemy. The greatest terror is not death itself, but the thought of dying without a final confession, of being buried outside the consecrated ground of the church cemetery, your soul left to wander, and your family left with the permanent, public stain of your unblessed end. The great religious festivals are the only cracks in this monolithic facade of solemn piety, moments when the city is allowed a brief, collective convulsion of joy. During the Feast of Corpus Christi, the streets are transformed. Tapestries hang from windows, and the cobblestones are strewn with fragrant herbs and flowers, their sweet scent a temporary mask for the city's usual perfume of decay. You are crushed in a crowd watching a procession of the city's guilds, each trying to outdo the other with painted banners and elaborate floats depicting biblical scenes. There are costume giants, grotesque figures with papier-mâché heads, and dancers with bells on their ankles. It is a sanctioned chaos, a brief, hysterical explosion of color and noise in a world of gray. But even here, the fear circulates. A crude woodcut print is passed from hand to hand, showing a monstrous pig born to a sow in a nearby village. The caption, printed with rough, uneven letters, declares it a sign of God's wrath, a warning against the secret heresies festering within the community. The crowd laughs, but it is a nervous laughter. The image plants a seed of dread. The pig is a monster, and someone, somewhere, is to blame. Later, in a tavern, the festival's chaotic energy sours into a more dangerous form of abandon. The air is a suffocating blanket of wood smoke, sweat, and the sticky sweet smell of cheap, potent wine. Men who were models of piety in the procession hours earlier are now red-faced and loud, their laughter echoing off the low, smoke-blackened ceiling. This is the most dangerous place in the city. Here, lubricated by wine, tongues are loosened. A complaint about the price of grain can sound like a critique of the Duke's governance. A joke about a fat priest can be twisted into an attack on the church itself. You sit in a dark corner, nursing your cup, your senses on high alert. You are listening to the conversations around you, not out of curiosity, but out of self-preservation, trying to gauge the mood, to identify the man whose drunken words might bring a quiet investigation down upon everyone in this room. You make yourself small, unremarkable, a silent witness to a communal dance on the edge of a cliff. The deep-seated taboos of your world extend even to the most private, intimate acts of life. The very act of love between a husband and wife is a landscape of potential sin, meticulously mapped out by theologians. Certain positions are forbidden, deemed unnatural, beastly, a corruption of the sacred act intended solely for procreation. To seek pleasure for its own sake is a sin of lust. To speak of these things, even in the confessional, is to invite a deeply uncomfortable line of questioning from a celibate priest who holds a morbid, academic fascination with the mechanics of your sin. A rumor that a couple is childless after many years of marriage can curdle into something sinister. Is it a curse from God? Or are they deliberately avoiding conception, a heresy of the highest order? Your bedroom is not a private sanctuary. It is a potential crime scene, and your own body is the primary evidence. Even your own thoughts are not truly your own. The Church teaches that a sinful thought, if entertained, is as grave as a sinful act. You learn to police the very landscape of your mind, to build walls against stray thoughts of envy, lust, or doubt. This internal struggle creates a profound and lonely form of anxiety. You might find yourself repeating prayers like a mantra, not out of love for God, but to drown out the rebellious whispers of your own mind. You attend confession not just to cleanse your soul, but to empty your head, to offer up the dark thoughts to the priest in the hope that speaking them will rob them of their power. But even this is a gamble. You must confess enough to seem pious and repentant, but not so much that your confessor begins to see a pattern, a predisposition to a certain kind of sin that might merit a closer, more official kind of scrutiny. In the end, your entire life is structured around the avoidance of notice. You learn to live in the gray middle, to be neither the most successful merchant nor the poorest beggar. You strive to be neither the most demonstratively pious nor the most obviously lax. You are a ship navigating a treacherous sea, and your goal is not to reach a glorious destination, but simply to avoid the rocks. You see a neighbor suddenly begin to prosper, his shop doing better than any other. You do not feel happy for him. You feel a cold knot of fear. Such success is unnatural. It invites envy, and envy is the mother of accusation. You see another neighbor fall into poverty and despair. You do not feel simple pity, you feel the same fear. Such misfortune is a sign of God's disfavor. Both men, the successful and the failed, have deviated from the mean. They have become noticeable. And, with a certainty that chills you to the bone, that in this world, to be noticed is to be endangered. But all machines, even those that seem eternal, eventually rust. The slow, grinding gears of centuries begin to shudder and groan, their purpose questioned by new voices, new ideas that spread not like a plague, but like a sunrise. You can almost feel the change in the air, a subtle shift in the atmospheric pressure of fear. Men with wigs of powdered white, their minds sharpened by a new philosophy called the Enlightenment, begin to write books of their own. They argue that a man's mind is his own sovereign territory, a place where no state or church has the right to trespass. They propose a radical, beautiful heresy, the presumption of innocence. The idea that the ledger of your soul should begin not with a debt of original sin, but as a clean, blank page, and that only an accuser, in the full light of day, should have the burden of making the first mark. The ink that condemns so many begins, finally, to run dry. This slow revolution does not happen in the torture chamber, but in the courtroom and the parliament. New laws are written, each one a careful stone placed over the mouth of an old terror. The idea that a confession extracted through pain is worthless, a poisoned fruit from a poisoned tree, begins to take root. The concept of a secret accuser, the faceless whisper that could undo a life, is deemed an abomination, an offense against reason and justice. If today you can face your accuser, if you are granted the right to a defense, if the proceedings against you are a matter of public record and not a secret file, it is because generations who lived under the shadow of that quiet dread fought to drag the process into the unforgiving light. They understood that the most dangerous monsters are not those that scream in the night, but those that work silently, meticulously, behind a closed door, with a stack of parchment. Think of the simple, unremarked freedoms of your modern life, each one a quiet monument to that long struggle. If you can buy bread from a baker without worrying that its weight is a theological statement, if you can refuse a portion of food at a friend's table without it being logged as evidence of heresy, you owe a debt to those who dismantled that architecture of suspicion. If a physician offers you a cure based on observable evidence rather than a theory of humors, and you can accept it without fear of being accused of witchcraft for shunning a priest's prayers, it is because the slow, painful divorce of superstition from daily life was finalized. These are the mundane legacies, the inheritance so profound it has become invisible. The freedom from having to perform your own orthodoxy in every single transaction of your day is a peace that was purchased at a terrible, forgotten price. The shadow of the quill, however, is long. The machine may be broken, but its ghost still haunts the language. When you speak today of a witch hunt, you are invoking the memory of a system where accusation was its own proof. When you fear the cold, impersonal logic of a bureaucracy, the feeling of being reduced to a case number in a forgotten file, you are feeling a distant echo of that quiet, administrative terror. The Inquisition perfected a model of surveillance and control, a system of data collection on the human soul that was terrifyingly modern in its efficiency. It created a culture of self-censorship, the instinct to look over your own shoulder before you speak, a habit that lingers in the cultural DNA of nations it once dominated. It is a quiet reminder that the most oppressive systems are often built not on brute force, but on the simple, powerful technology of a pen, a piece of paper, and a place to file it. And so, as you lie in the quiet of your room, let the world of the familiar and the file recede. That world, with its suffocating weight of constant performance and hidden dread, has dissolved back into the ink of history books. The air you breathe is not thick with the fear of a misspoken word. The silence is not pregnant with the possibility of being overheard. The thoughts that drift through your mind as you fall into slumber are your own, a private, sovereign kingdom where no clerk can enter to take notes. The great, sprawling ledger of souls has been closed, its pages filled, its purpose served. Tonight, there is no file with your name on it. There is no anxious prayer to be mumbled, no performance to maintain. There is only the stillness, the darkness, and the profound, unwritten freedom to simply be. And in that quiet, you can finally and safely sleep.